The first time money made your chest go tight, you probably were not holding any. Maybe you were 8. Maybe you were lying in bed, supposed to be asleep, listening to voices through the wall talking in that low, careful tone adults use when something is wrong. You could not have explained a bill if your life depended on it. But you understood the tone perfectly. Something about money was dangerous, and the people who kept you safe were scared of it. Somewhere in a moment like that, long before your first salary, your relationship with money quietly began. And that is the strange thing this video is about. For a lot of people, financial anxiety is not a reaction to their finances. It arrived first. It was installed years before the first paycheck, the first rent, the first debt, and it has been coloring every money decision since, which raises an uncomfortable and weirdly hopeful question. If the anxiety was learned before the problems, what exactly is it reacting to now? Hold on to that, because the answer changes what fixing it even means. The common belief goes like this: I feel anxious about money because my money situation is bad. Fix the situation, fix the feeling. And sometimes that is true, but it fails to explain some very common people. The one who earns well, has savings, and still feels a spike of dread opening a banking app. The one who checks their balance 5 times a day, or the one who has not checked it in 3 months because they physically cannot. The one who feels guilt buying shoes they can easily afford. If anxiety only tracked reality, none of those people should exist. They exist everywhere. Understanding where a feeling like that actually comes from, instead of just being bossed around by it, is the entire project of this channel. This is Wealth Modules, and today's module is less about the money and more about the wiring underneath it. So let's go back to where the wiring was installed. Start with how children learn about money, because it is not how we think. Nobody sits a 7-year-old down and explains interest rates. What a child actually receives is the emotional weather. The pause before a parent opens an envelope. The argument that always seemed to start after shopping. The sentence "we can't afford it," said flat, or said with shame, or said with fear, because each version teaches something different. Children are terrible at understanding finance, and brilliant at reading faces. So the first thing money ever becomes in a young mind is not a number, it is a mood. Out of that weather, a child writes rules. Not consciously, and not in words, but rules all the same. Money disappears, so grab it while it is there. Money causes fights, so avoid the topic. Wanting things makes people sad, so stop wanting. There is never enough, no matter what anyone does. Researchers who study the psychology of money describe how beliefs absorbed this early quietly steer adult financial behavior decades later. And the unsettling part is how invisible they are. You do not experience them as rules. You experience them as just how you are. Here is the picture I find most useful. Think of financial anxiety as a smoke alarm. A smoke alarm is a good thing. You want one. The problem is that yours was calibrated in a different house. It was set during years when the danger was real, or at least real to the people raising you, and it learned to scream at the faintest trace of smoke. Now you live somewhere else. The finances are different, maybe genuinely okay, but the alarm does not know that. It still fires at the old threshold. The dread you feel opening the app is not always a report about your money. Sometimes it is an echo of someone else's kitchen. Childhood is not the only place the alarm gets set. Early adulthood does its own installing, because firsts are heavy. The first overdraft and the hot shame of the message that came with it. The first time a card was declined with people watching. The stretch at university when you were genuinely broke and learned to feel hunted by small numbers. Even when your situation improves, those moments do not politely leave. The body keeps the receipts. Years later, a completely safe balance can still feel like the edge of a cliff, because somewhere in you, it once was. And around all of this sits a silence that makes everything worse. Money is one of the last things people honestly talk about. We will discuss health scares and heartbreak before we will name a salary or a debt. So everyone's anxiety grows in private, uncorrected, with no way to discover how normal it is. Shame is a feeling that needs the dark, and money, socially, is kept very dark. Half of what makes financial anxiety heavy is not the anxiety itself. It is carrying it alone while assuming everyone else feels calm. There is also a generational twist worth naming, because it explains a confusing kind of household. Parents who fought their way out of real hardship often carry the alarm with them into better times. So a child can grow up in a financially stable home that still feels financially frightened. Plenty on the table, tension in the air. That child inherits an anxiety with no visible cause, which is in some ways harder to understand than one with a story attached. If your money fear seems to have come from nowhere, it may simply have come from someone. Alarms get handed down more reliably than money does. Now here is where this stops being just an origin story, because anxiety that arrived before the problems can start creating them. Avoidance is the clearest case. If looking at your accounts hurts, you stop looking, and unwatched money develops problems, which makes looking hurt even more. Or the opposite pattern, where spending becomes the only reliable relief from the tension, so the anxiety about money quietly drives the exact purchases that damage the money. The alarm, left uncalibrated, does not just misreport the fire, it can start one. It also wears disguises, which is why so few people call it anxiety at all. In one person, it looks like extreme frugality, praised by everyone as discipline, though it is actually fear with a good reputation. In another, it looks like generosity that cannot say no, keeping everyone else comfortable so the tension stays quiet. In another, it is the constant low hum of doing sums in your head, at dinner, in the shower, at 2 in the morning. Different costumes, same wiring underneath. If a behavior around money feels compulsory rather than chosen, it is worth asking what it is protecting you from feeling. So here is the shift, and it is the reason the origin story matters. Separate the alarm from the fire. The feeling and the facts are two different instruments, and they need to be read separately. The facts are checkable. What is in the accounts? What is owed? What is coming in? The feeling is real too, but it is measuring something else. Your history, your training, the house where it was calibrated. You can take the feeling seriously as information about you, without obeying it as information about your money. That distinction changes what fixing financial anxiety even means. If the anxiety were purely about the situation, the only cure would be more money belaying. But if part of the anxiety is old calibration, then part of the work is recalibration. And recalibration does not require a raise. It requires new, repeated experiences of looking at the truth and surviving it. That is genuinely good news. It is work you can start this week, at any income. So this week, 3 small things. First, find the original setting. Write down your earliest memory involving money. Not to analyze your family, just to see the lesson. Then finish this sentence honestly. Money is, and write the first 3 words that arrive. Scary, freedom. Never enough. Other people's. Whatever comes. Those words are usually the rule you absorbed. And a rule you can see written down has far less power than one running silently in the background. Second, start reality testing the alarm. The next time the dread spikes, do one small thing before you react. Check a single fact. One balance, one bill, one number, whichever thing the anxiety is pointing at. Then notice the gap between what you felt and what you found. Sometimes the fact is genuinely bad, and now you know, and knowing has edges you can act on. But often the fact is smaller than the feeling, and every time you catch that gap, the alarm recalibrates a little. And if you want to weaken the silence part of this, one conversation does more than you would guess. Pick one person you trust, and say one true sentence about money out loud. Not the whole story. One sentence. Money stresses me more than I let on. What usually comes back is some version of me too, and hearing it once, from a real voice, corrects years of assuming you were the only one carrying this. Third, Make looking boring. One short scheduled money check a week. A few minutes, same day, something pleasant afterward. Not to fix anything, just to teach your body that seeing the numbers is survivable, because that is how thresholds reset, through small repeated proof. And one honest note, because it matters. If money anxiety is heavy enough that it is disturbing your sleep, your relationships, or your health, that is not a character flaw, and it is bigger than a YouTube video. Talking to a professional about anxiety is as sensible as seeing a mechanic about brakes. If this video has felt like someone finally describing the thing, that is exactly why this channel exists, and subscribing means the next module finds you. Because here is the gentlest truth in all of this. Your financial anxiety, at some point, made perfect sense. It was a child doing their best to stay safe in a house where money meant tension, or a young adult surviving a genuinely hard stretch. It was protection. It worked. It is just still running, long after the situation changed, the way alarms do. So you do not have to fight it, or hate it, or be embarrassed by it. You just have to update it. One old memory named, one fact checked against one feeling, one calm look at the numbers each week. Slowly, the alarm learns the new house, and you get to have a relationship with money that belongs to your actual life, not your oldest fear. That is slow work, and it counts anyway. Progress beats perfection, especially here. See you in the next module.